I'm very delighted to be here, and I'd like to say a few words about innovation. You know, actually, surviving as a company is very hard, and the Harvard Business School says that after 4 years, about 3/4 of startups have failed. We've been around for some 30 years, and we've done that largely through innovation, and I wanted to say a few words about that. In fact, there are very few software companies that have survived for 30 years and grown to significant size. In fact, there are only 8. And so we're in company like SAP, Adobe, Oracle, but there are only 8 of them. And we've accomplished this, I believe, for the most part, because we've been relentless innovators. Our mission at Intuit is to so improve the financial lives of our customers that they can't imagine going back to the old way. And we do that with products like QuickBooks, TurboTax, and Mint for personal finances. Now, we've had a long history of adapting to change in our environment. We started out as a DOS company, and then we moved to Windows, and then to the web at scale, and then to mobile, and now to wearables and intelligent systems. And we've had to move our software forward through all those generations of technology and figure out how to make it work really well on each of those different platforms. We've also survived quite a bit of competitive onslaught during that period, and perhaps a good example of that was about a decade ago, Microsoft decided to enter our space in accounting, both personal and small business, and we were ultimately, through innovation and network effects, able to defeat that onslaught, and Microsoft actually gave up those products in the marketplace. So we're very explicit about innovating, the energy that we put into it, how we teach people at the company to innovate, and our model is a very simple one. It is to find an important unsolved customer problem that we can solve well and, importantly, with durable advantage. And the businesses that we have that are successful are the ones that are in the intersection of all 3 of those. Now, you can get at this kind of innovation in various different ways. First of which we're probably best at, is insight from customers. So that means sitting down with customers, observing them in their own habitat, understanding what their problems are, and then trying to figure out what we could do to better that situation. And perhaps the best example of that is our very first product. This came about when our founder, Scott Cook, was watching his wife at the kitchen table, that's the kitchen table, struggling to balance the checkbook at the end of the month and reconcile it with the bank statement. And he thought, there's got to be a better way. So he and a partner set about building what became Quicken, and that struggled for several years. The company almost didn't make it. We had to pivot several times in our go-to-market approach. We originally thought we would sell it through banks and found out that wasn't going to work. And it required constant innovation to outpace competitors who had already entered the market. And it eventually became the #1 personal finance system in North America. Now, you can also get at innovation through technology insight. This would be when you come up with an idea for how to build something in a way that customers would never think to ask you to do. Now, when you do this, of course, there's still a burden of proof that it solves an important customer problem, otherwise it's technology and service to nothing, and that it does that in a durable way that competitors aren't going to be able to chip away at very easily. And I think a good example here is what we're doing with, most recently with our TurboTax program. That started out as a forms-based program that looked exactly like the paper forms you used to fill out by hand and turn into the government, but did auto-calculation. The next generation of that was to move to an interview where you would ask a series of simple questions from which we would, in the background, construct those forms to send off to the government. But it's a very cumbersome program, and in which most customers, 30 million customers, have to go through the same roughly 170 screens, and we thought that there must be a better way. And the answer came through technology innovation, which was to take this system, which had been cast as a procedural system, moving from left to right, and turn it into a rules-based system with a constraint solver and an optimizer, so that essentially customers could have different experiences. 30 million customers could see 30 million different experiences moving through the product, where they could be asked the questions most relevant to them personally based on every fact we know about them, and where they could choose the order that they wanted to move through it in if it happened that we were asking for a piece of information that they didn't have at the moment. This is also resulting in about a 10x reduction in lines of code. Developers are able to move much more swiftly because the code is cleaner and it's conceptually simpler, so there's customer benefit and developer benefit as well. Last, I'd like to talk about innovation through insights that come from thinking about how you make your products have durable advantage against competitors. And perhaps the most strong in the software space form of durable advantage is the network effect, where one party helps another party grow, which helps the first party grow. And in our case, that is the best network effect that we have that actually has sustained us through many competitive onslaughts has been the relationship between accountants and small business owners. And the situation is that small business owners hire accountants. Accountants recommend to new nascent small businesses that they use QuickBooks. They become successful. They recommend to their friends QuickBooks. They hire more accountants. And so it becomes a spiral that's beneficial to all parties. So a few things to consider when you're implementing innovation. First, and perhaps most important, is the idea of having a big vision that you implement in small bites. We have made the mistake a few times of having a really big vision and trying to bite it off all at once, and those projects have almost always crashed and burned because it's too much to stomach at one time. We've also made the opposite mistake of having projects that we executed in small bites, but had a clear sense of where we're heading, just sort of responding to the nearest impetus, the nearest customer input. And then we look up 3 years later and go, where have we gotten to? Have we fundamentally made these products any better? And the answer is, well, not really. They have a few more features, but they're not much better. So the combination of big vision implemented one bite at a time turns out to be very powerful. Now, when you have that big vision, it's important to break it down into small bites in time, but also into small teams that are working on it in parallel with each other. And small teams are really important because they communicate better. Now, in addition to having small teams, each of those teams, we've found it to be important to make them be as diverse as they can be. So different levels of skills of engineer, different gender, and we find at the end of every year when we rate our innovation programs and we give awards to the teams who are most innovative, it is the teams that are most diverse that typically win those awards. So diversity for innovation. Click, there we go. Another one is the idea of mixing top-down and bottom-up innovation. All too often it's easy for the senior people in a company to prescribe the direction that you want to go in, but that isn't harnessing the brain power of all the people who work in the company, some of whom may come up with a doozy of an idea at any moment. And so it's good to have a mechanism to harness that innovative power. So we actually encourage 10% unstructured time for our designers, our product managers, and our engineers that's not controlled by their manager, where they get to go work on what inspires them that they think may be aligned with our business. And every year, some of those things come to naught, and some of them actually get turned into products or features of products. And every year we have over 100 of those that actually find their way to market. Now, you know, if we survive long enough, all of us get to a point where our code has become long in the tooth, where it becomes difficult to innovate, where it's brittle, and every time you try to make a product extension, you may just easily break something else. And we found ourselves in that position. If you look at our products, they became, over the course of 20 or 30 years, monoliths that were separate from each other, that didn't share data back and forth, didn't share services back and forth. So over the last couple of years, we've been on a journey to refactor all of our code into services, smaller services that can be composed separately, that can be reused, that we can build on much more quickly. It makes our engineers faster, it makes us able to innovate faster, and it facilitates things like workflows and data flows that go between products to simplify the lives of our customers. So tech refresh becomes very important. One example of a service that we've built is our financial data platform. What this does is it connects to banks and other data sources to extract things like tax forms, to extract transactions from your bank account and feed those into QuickBooks and Mint and TurboTax so that our customers don't have to enter that data by hand and they can show up and find an experience that's almost done. So that's an example of one of our services. Now, with all this work on innovation, it enables us to hire great engineers because great engineers want to work on innovative projects. And we also spend a lot of energy in enabling those engineers to do the best work of their lives. And as a consequence, our team here in India has been rated the #7 best place to work in India, #4 overall in the IT industry, and #3 at supporting women remaining at work. Because of this, we're confident that we've got another 30 years of innovation in front of us, and I'd love to take a few questions.